Sorry for the tardiness on our part. We had some personal stuff to deal with. But we are live. John, have to leave promptly at 5, so I do have a bit of a hard cutoff there. But before I forget, make sure, if you see this on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Before we're going to be talking about guns and gears today, as you can probably guess from the background image, that is actually the PDF behind our cameras. But before we jump into that, there's a couple of housekeeping announcements stuff we want to make. First of all, we have been thinking about ways to improve the stream going forward. One of the things we've been considering, since most of our audience is on YouTube, we've been considering the idea of moving over to YouTube Live for streaming this Fighting Pass stream. I'm going to be experimenting with it at some point over the next week. It won't be something planned. It'll just be something ad hoc I throw together. I'll probably just like stream some preparations for the next Shifting Sands game. So if you are one of my players playing in that next week, probably shouldn't join in because it's going to be spoilery. Unless you don't care about that kind of thing and are able to keep your metagame knowledge to yourself, then I don't mind so much. But in addition to that, what else was there? We've been talking about maybe for this stream not adhering so strictly to the 1 hour 4 to 5 rule. We've been thinking maybe continue to start at 4, but maybe we just take as long as we need to cover the material we want to cover. I know sometimes myself, and I think Jack too, has felt a bit rushed in certain situations, or maybe we feel like we have to we don't have enough content to cover, and we feel like we're like stretching things out just to fit that 1 hour time slot. So we're playing with the idea of kind of just fitting the stream to what we need to talk about. We haven't made any concrete decisions on either of those things, but it's something. Those things are something we're considering, just to keep that in mind. But yeah, let's jump into Guns and Gears. We should probably mention that this is quite a dense book. In fact, in the introduction copy at the very beginning of the book, they mention it's basically 3 books in one. There are 3 kind of primary components.
John,
What was that?
To start off, what day is this technically considered it was released? How's the mic on there?
What do you mean consider it was released? The stream or the book?
The book.
Today. Today is the official release of the book.
Okay.
So, we're coming out this hot. We've had the, thanks to the Paizo subscription, we've had access to the PDF for a few days now. I had a bit of kerfuffle with Paizo's subscription service, and it ended up not getting out to me much later than it should have. But it was ample enough time to get a high level gist of everything. But yeah, it is a fairly dense book, so we won't be able to cover the entire thing in this 45-minute at this point stream. So we're kind of going to treat this as more of a high level overview of just what's in the book, what our first impressions of various things. And then we'll be releasing some pre-recorded videos covering each of the quote-unquote modules that was in this book throughout the next week. So speaking of modules, Jack, you want to talk about the 3 primary components that make up this dense little tome?
So, I was not expecting this when I picked up Guns and Gears. Usually when you hear about a new book that's going to be coming out, you're expecting there's going to be 2 new classes, maybe a new ancestry. Right off the bat, when you pick up this book, you're going to see that it straight up divides it into 3 large sections, which makes basically 3 books in one. I can't stress that enough. You're completely getting your money's worth. First book section seems to be about the gears, even though it says it's Guns and Gears, right? Gears came first.
Yeah, and I found that weird as well, but
so they cover gears first. So you're looking at the inventor class and the ancestry, the automaton, and then the guns class, which is going to cover the gunslinger, all of its archetypes. And then this last section is just so dense. It's going to cover a lot of the lore that leads up to how to implement Guns and Gears into your game, and also to include all the different factions that are throughout Galarian, which
Yeah, the final
Jonathan?
section is much more specific to the Galarian setting, but it does have a lot of really interesting ideas that I haven't admittedly been able to read through all of the lore section yet. Um, but from what I have read, there's a lot of interesting ideas in there that could be, as a game master, you can pick and choose and kind of implement your own setting if you have one, or just use verbatim if you're using Galarian. So I appreciate that they kind of added that. Typically, the lore kind of stuff is left out of the what they call the hardcovers or the core books, and left to the more Lost Omens books. But I appreciate, from a game master perspective, that they did add a bit of that in there to kind of explain where they're coming from with these ideas. In fact, a bit of a like a not so much a tangent, but a bit of a aside here is that when I first picked up Pathfinder 2e back in 2019 or whatever, one of the very first things I noticed, being a software engineer by trade, I noticed that the way the system itself was designed was extremely modular in that there were a few fundamental principles, and those principles were kind of combined in different ways to create all the various mechanics, the cool, unique mechanics that the system has. And I thought to myself, I mentioned this in a previous stream, that I thought to myself that, somebody on the design team of Paizo who worked on this project had to have been or currently is a software engineer, because a lot of the ideas that they utilize in designing the system seem to have roots in various software design principles. And turns out Mark Schaefer, I believe is his name, or Schaefer, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, but he's one of the primary designers on the core Pathfinder 2e system and core books. He actually was, or maybe even is still, a software engineer by trade as well. So that completely makes sense to me. And I love to see that with this book, they've kind of continued that modular approach, because you can really take any bits of this and implement it in your game with, just leave the rest behind. Like, you don't need to add everything in this book. You want some firearms? Pick the ones you like, add them. You want some inventor stuff, but don't really care particular about firearms? Awesome. You can pull the clockwork and steam powered stuff, or the crazy station coils, I think they're called, the Tesla coil like things that are super wild. We'll get to in a bit.
Are you talking about the level 20 snares?
Yeah, well, yeah. So in the gear section, they mentioned there's like 3 primary forms of technology in Galarian. There's the clockwork stuff, there's the steam powered stuff, and then there's the super rare from the Yugoslav or whatever region. There's that station coils, I think they're called, which are basically Tesla coils. And yeah, I think there is a level 20 snare that is based around those.
I think it was like some 7d12 damage.
Yeah.
It was like, seemed kind of low for a 20, but I'm getting too specific.
Well, it was
maybe.
a pretty, from what I thought that too, but then I noticed it was a pretty big area of effect, and it was a save based, so I think that's why they chose to make the number of dice so low. But that's just a speculation on my part. But yeah, let's start with, I guess. God, just
Gears?
scrolling through this thing is so massive. Let's start with the
start off
inventor
with,
class. I guess that's the very first big thing in the book.
It's really weird because I wasn't a fan of the art for the inventor at first, but as you kind of like go through, this guy keeps reoccurring, and you kind of get attached to him.
The orc.
Mm-hmm.
The PDF viewer is struggling to render these massive art photos, but yeah, this dude is awesome. And they actually, they go into a bit of the lore behind him and some of these like sidebars and things like that, and the guy sounds really cool. I expect, and in fact, I have no doubt you will encounter him in some of the Pathfinder Society. What do you call them? Not adventure paths, but whatever they call the society things they do, the quick ones that are for the organized play. They have a different term for him, but I have no doubt you'll find them in there, because in the lore, he's actually a member of the Pathfinder Society, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, what'd you think of the inventor class overall?
Pretty lucky to have a playtester in your Shifting Sands game, so we're already kind of really attached to the inventor.
They didn't change a whole lot with it either from the playtest. Like there's some things they changed, but for the most part, it stayed pretty faithful to what was in the playtest.
With the inventor, I mean, from the overdrive mechanic between working on you or working on your construct. I mean, it seemed like from a perspective of like going forward with how they do playtesting, this is an example of playtesting gone right.
Hmm.
Like there was such little changes, whereas we saw there was so many changes from Magus. Um,
Yeah.
the inventor is just like
Well, when we get down to Gunslinger, there was actually quite a bit of changes in Gunslinger. The playtest Gunslinger was not very well received by the community, and I think that they did at least in my opinion, they did a fairly good job of correcting the concerns the community had. So, however, I ran about this quite a bit to Jack, and he at this point it's basically a meme for him or for them. But so at so for the inventor, I think it makes perfect sense to be a class. It adds some unique stuff that isn't in the game otherwise. Like the idea that you can kind of you have your armor or your weapon or your construct, and it evolves with your character, and you can modify it however you want, and you can even change these modifications over time, which I think is awesome. I love that it does not restrict you into whatever choice you made. You know what I mean? Like a lot of classes, when you make a choice, you have to spend a lot of time and effort to retrain anything. But with a lot of the inventor, I think they call them innovations.
mm-hmm.
You don't like you can just when you level up, you can say, I'm not super happy with this. I'll just change it to something else. As long as it's within the same innovation. Yeah.
The feeling of being a tinker is really there, and I mean it's a solid class out the gate with 8 HP. I think it has both fort and will as its expert.
Yes, you are correct.
And then you're looking at having a crafting or intelligence based class. There's a lot of synergies out there for the intelligence based classes.
Yep.
So I like to run the intelligence based classes. I think intelligence is like one of the next stronger attributes from a power gamer perspective, right after dexterity.
Well, the nice thing about intelligence is it also affects the number of skill you have for any class. So that's what makes it so useful in Pathfinder 2 specifically.
Mm.
So being a class that uses intelligence as the key ability is that much better, in my opinion.
And so you get those skills.
But what I was getting at with the kind of complaint I did have, which was, it's kind of jumping ahead, but with the Gunslinger, I felt like it didn't need to be a class. I felt like the 3 Gunslinger ways could have just been archetypes and just give them in that archetype the ability to access firearms. Like there's nothing with the inventor, you have this unique cool thing. With Gunslinger, you're just a fighter who uses guns. Like there's nothing special about it. Like I don't know. I feel like they tried very hard to make a class out of something that didn't need to be a class just because it was a class in first edition. And I don't necessarily think that's the right approach.
The Gunslinger just did not have enough grit.
Yeah.
I
strongly feel,
and yeah, I feel the same.
Yeah, I strongly feel that aside from the core classes in the core rulebook, any classes introduced in the extension books, if they're going to be a class, they need to have something unique, that some new rule that doesn't exist previously, that nothing else can do or should be able to do. And anything else should just be an archetype. Like archetypes are such a brilliant facet of the system, and I don't feel like they're being utilized to their best ability. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to the Gunslinger, I suppose. I don't want to beat that horse too much before we take a look at it.
So going with the inventor, the 3 different what would you call these? The builds,
the innovations,
being able to choose
what they call them.
Your innovations. You're choosing between armor, weapon, or a construct. Yep. I flat out love the construct. To just looking at it from a top perspective, I think construct beats out animal companion hands down in every way.
Yeah.
Towards the end, it's grows to the point where at the end you can give it 3 actions by spending 2 of your own.
Mm-hmm. So or you can still give it 1 to spend 2 as well. Mm-hmm. You just have the choice at the end.
But you have that option as well. So your construct is going to win out on animal companion every time because of its construct tag. It's naturally get its immunities to like bleeds and other mechanical resistances that It's not going to compare to an animal companion.
When in the Shifting Sands game, the player that was running the playtest inventor went up against some orcs, and I was playing the orcs very. In my setting, orcs are not stupid creatures. Like they're very good with tactics and whatnot. So they were trying to use like they didn't know what a construct was, but they were trying to use some like skill actions like demoralize and what was the other one? Create a diversion that have the mental tag, and they're like, why isn't this working? Because this thing is obviously because it's a construct, but in game they didn't know that. So it actually turned out to be quite potent because that was like they were using those quite to their advantage on the other characters, but the inventor was able to tank some of that using his construct, which was awesome. I will say that the construct in the event, like the construct innovation in the inventor line, definitely seems more geared towards combat than like animal companion in like rangers or druids. So I agree with Jack that it does seem a bit more powerful than your typical animal companion or even your undead what do you call them, undead summons and not summons
Oh, you're talking about the companion for having undead, like a cleric having an undead
yeah, they have a
companion.
different name. I can't remember what they're called.
The traits, the undead tag is okay, but construct straight up I think
Yeah,
is going to win out.
but construct
Um,
aside, even like the armor and the weapons are pretty cool in their own right. Like they have some pretty awesome things you can do with them. Like like I said, I love the fact that you can change and tinker with them over time to do different things. Not only do you gain more abilities with them, but you can swap out the abilities you chose pretty reasonably without a whole lot of effort, which is really cool. Definitely adds to the flavor of the tinkerer inventor class, which I think is sweet.
you're
Um,
with the cleric, like they can send their minion out there to do that final explosion, but
yeah,
constructs they have like it built into their class features.
I love the idea that the constructs in particular have the ability to repair them, kind of built into
Mhm.
the class, and that when they quote unquote die, they don't just go away like an animal companion does, but they actually use the dying rules for in the wounded rules for a player character, and it gives the opportunity for an inventor to kind of repair them mid combat, which is kind of cool.
So I think we've covered
Yeah.
quite a bit about the construct. Moving on, the last two sections of it for Inventor, you can kind of become Iron Man, and there's two different armors just right out the gate that
Yep.
they went with. One being balanced towards dexterity, and one being more balanced towards having more armor class. So you can kind of play the Iron Man or a what's the is it the Big Daddy from BioShock? You can totally play something like that. And then the weapon, I really liked the weapon. I was running through some ideas about making a like a Magitech Magus, having a, you know, overpowered weapon and then running through with an archetype of a Magus.
Hmm.
I really think that there's some synergy here, and I can't quite figure out which I like more, either having an inventor with an archetype Magus or a Magus archetype inventor.
My
But
only complaint with Inventor, and I know why they did this, but it's still a complaint of mine, is that they don't get firearm proficiency out the gate. I don't. I
yeah,
does not make sense to me that a class built around the idea of tinkering and crafting and building and
now
modifying intricate things cannot figure out how to work a firearm.
I don't know if they covered the rules in the third section or if it's in the Gunslinger section, but I believe they explicitly stated there are simple guns.
There
And that,
are, yes, but they are still have the firearm tag, and they don't qualify under simple ranged weapons. They're considered simple firearms, which means that while the inventor does get access to simple weapons, I believe simple firearms are not included in that list, which is stupid. Um,
they wanted to make the Gunslinger
I
its
think
own
why
unique
they did
thing.
it is so that you could pick out the um, you could pull out the inventor stuff without having to integrate firearms into your setting, right? Because the whole idea is that they want you to be able to pick and choose what you want to play. So mechanically speaking, if you wanted to use firearms, you could use one of the gunslinger based archetypes out there and kind of get access to that. So I mean, I get it, but it still
I mean, if you're
bothers
playing
me.
with the weapon, you can make it a functional gun.
That
It's
is
your
true.
personal weapon, and you can make it ranged, and it
That
had
is true.
quite a few abilities to go with it.
That is true. If you were taking the weapon innovation, then you totally could make a gun out of it. But I think we've touched on Inventor quite enough. We're halfway into this, and we've still got a lot of things to cover.
Yep.
So let's see what's next here. They didn't do a very good job in the PDF of the layout of the bookmarks or whatever you call it.
If I remember correctly, the next would be the Ancestry Automaton.
Actually, the next would be the gear character options, which are like the archetypes for. Oh, it does start with the automaton. Okay, cool. So the automaton, which I think is an amazing ancestry, and I love everything they did with it. What do you think, Jack?
Okay, so they put that rare tag on there, and I can see why they did it,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of wish they didn't, because okay, so uncommon ancestries already, you have to get, I think, common etiquette, nice courtesy. If you're playing a uncommon archetype or ancestor, and get permission from your GM. But putting a rare tag on there almost is like saying now you have to convince your game master to let you play that, and I can see why, because for the ability boosts, it's straight up strength and free.
Yeah, it's very much like a human where you get 2 boosts and no flaws instead of 3 boosts and 1 flaw, which is arguably pretty powerful.
It's really nice. Not to mention thematically, it's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Between the resting options, you still need to be in an inactive mode, I think they even said that you still need to be able to like recycle your exhaust, which is a type of breathing.
Yes, I love that. They didn't just take the 5e or the 3.5e approach where they said, "Oh, you don't have to breathe. Screw it." They still kept the mechanics for like swimming and all that stuff where you can still suffocate and drown and all that stuff because you still need to vent your. Sorry, my dogs are whining. You still need to vent your exhaust basically, and that's kind of your way of breathing, which I thought was an awesome way of handling that.
I definitely want to do a deep dive on this ancestry to just kind of cover all of the loose bits for it.
Yep. This might honestly take an entire video in itself because this thing is really cool. Like they've done some really neat stuff with this. I also love the idea of you being able to the different heritages of different forms. So like the hunter heritage typically takes a quadrupedal form, whereas the mage heritage, let's see, is bipedal, I believe, but you have like magic emanating from your core. And then the sharpshooter automaton basically has a gun on their hand, which I just really cool flavor wise. I think as a GM, I'd probably allow them to mix and match those however they want. I don't.
Alo says they can finally play Android 18. That's correct.
Yes.
Alo, if you're gonna play 18, are you gonna play the magic type or the sharpshooter? I think there's a warrior automaton too. There's
yes, I forgot about warrior. Yeah, that would probably be.
That would be perfect for Android 18, getting that extra fist damage type.
Yeah, I mean, even the feats, and again, we're not going to deep dive into these in this because we don't have time, but we will be doing another video on them. The feats are awesome. Like, you get an energy beam. How freaking cool is that? Like, or you can get an energy beam, I guess.
It's like a little bit of Starfinder just bled right into Pathfinder, and I absolutely loved it.
I think a lot of this book blends a lot of Starfinder inspired things with Pathfinder 2e. Like, there's a lot of things in this book that are obviously inspired by, if not taken verbatim from Starfinder rules, and I think it's pretty cool. I love their kind of
a ha and a may in there. Yeah, there's the ha. Kamehameha. He's power Bob.
There we go.
Hit us with that.
Don't want to cut the incantation short. Yeah, there's all kinds of really, like, you can get camouflage, which I think is awesome at level 9. There's all kinds of just really cool stuff in here. I will say, I think it
level
was
9. You get a free blur and invisibility. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice to have. That's gonna up your utility right there. There's a reason that this is rare.
Oh, I remember one thing I did find interesting is that oh, no, that wasn't it. There was somewhere to do with fly. I don't think this was it, but there was somewhere to do with the fly somewhere in this book. Like, somebody gets access to flying way later than I felt like they should have. And I don't remember where it was at this point. So maybe I'll come across it again when we do the deep dives. But I remember there's one point I'm like, why is it like level 12 and you're just now getting access to flying? It wasn't this one. This is, you get this at 9, but maybe it was this one, because you don't really get full use of it until you get the enchantment or the enhancement, which is like level 12, I think.
You can fly. It's the armor propulsion one, I think. Go up a little bit. I don't know if you're looking.
Yeah, but I'm so you get, like, at level 9, you get the basic thing. You redirect energy from your core to ports them back your feet, allowing you to fly for a short time. You can maintain this redirected energy for 5 minutes. You gain fly speed. Oh, I remember what it was. So you get the fly speed for 5 minutes, but you can only use this once per day. And I'm like, it's already later than a mage would be, or a spellcaster would be able to get the fly spell. And then, like, you don't get, like, the ability to use it more than once per day until you get the enhancement, which is at level, like, 12 or 13, I believe. Which I found to be a really odd restriction. Like, I felt like it to be pretty unnecessary, but maybe I'm missing something there.
Silver lining, the enchantment bonuses that they have for the racial stuff, I love the way they scaled them.
Yeah.
They had some kind of like game changers. Like, it feels like you're really planning out your advancement.
Yeah, it's like you can have a build within a build, which is really cool. I love the enhancement idea they took here, and I hope they do more with that in future classes or in future ancestries.
Did you want to cover the gears or move on to Gunslinger?
Yeah, I think we'll skip the backgrounds, except that I want to point out that I love the kind of tongue-in-cheek thing they did here, like the anti-tech activist and things like that. They added in here. They're just really, really neat and different. There was another one in here I thought was funny somewhere. Maybe it was under Gunslinger, but there's just some really cool, like...
Was that? Saboteur made me super happy.
Yeah, Saboteur was really cool. I love the idea of that one. Let's see what else we got here. Gears archetypes. Let's take a look at those. I know there's a couple in here. We can't go into all of them in detail, but there's a couple really cool ones. Of course, you got the Inventor multi-class, which is good.
You get, with the Inventor multi-class, you do get to have an innovation, which
you just get it it upgrades much later. Is the only thing.
But you do get it. Yep. So if you're choosing that construct, you can have an animal companion, which I will note, Ranger and Druid, if you take the dedications, you don't get an animal companion by taking either of those cross-class dedications.
You have to take the Beastmaster archetype to get it.
It's way more powerful taking the archetype.
Yeah.
Compared to other existing classes.
I wouldn't say initially powerful, because the levels you get the upgrades are past when the viability of that does start to fall off. So
level 2 archetype, a Druid and a Ranger, you would have to spend that feat to get it.
Yeah.
Level 2 for an Inventor, it comes with the construct,
right?
So you get the construct pet right out the gate at that level as soon as
but as you get higher in level, if you took that feat as a Ranger or Druid, your animal companion is going to be much more powerful than your innovation coming from the archetype, because the archetype innovation doesn't scale. It scales very slowly.
Archetypes, not
that's what you're saying. Okay, yeah, that's fair.
As far as, like, if you're looking to get, say, like in your game where a free archetype is something that's I have to take an archetype because it's available. And so if I wasn't sure where to place it, getting that pet option either sooner or later.
Yep. That's fair.
It doesn't compare to the Druid. Now, the Druid, of course, you do get some spell casting.
I do love the Trapsmith, and I think, I might be wrong here, but I think this is the first time we've seen a dedication archetype that requires already having another dedication archetype. I could be wrong about that because I don't have all the archetypes memorized, but
It felt like a prestige archetype,
yeah,
and I love the direction they're going with it. So
yep,
now, kobolds, rangers, and the snare specialists
hmm
all have kind of the ability to throw down a snare with one action,
yeah.
which it was
And
much needed
if you
because
notice,
1 minute.
this archetype dedication feat is actually level 4, not level 2, which makes sense because you need the level 2 one to take the other one. But one thing I did find interesting about this, and I don't know. Oh, there it is, right there. You can select the dedication feat for the Trapsmith archetype, even if you haven't yet gained 3 feats from the Snarecrafter archetype. Okay, that alleviates my concern there. Because one of the, on all of these dedication archetypes, they have that special tag like this one. It says you can't select another dedication feat until you've gained 2 other feats from the Snarecrafter or Trapsmith archetypes. I'm like, well, how does that work if this is level 4? But then they alleviate that by just stating you can just ignore that rule for this one, which is cool.
It's the first prestige archetype. If you guys are watching this on YouTube or Odyssey and you guys know of any other dedication that has that, let us know.
Yeah.
I love that little familiar guy.
So Gears equipment is everything you expect it to be, and I love. Well, first of all, siege weapons and siege technology in general in this game is just freaking awesome. They have some really cool ones in here that I wish we could go into right now, but we can't. Same with the snares, but there's awesome stuff, and I love that they included the utility gear, like just random stuff like furniture and shit like that just are just common, like throughout the regions in Galarian who have access to this technology.
Rocket boots,
Yeah,
grappling hooks.
but it's not even that. It's things like couches and lights and things like that. Stuff that you don't really use as a character,
Parasol?
but
There was a parasol, wasn't there? Or was there umbrella?
there is an umbrella with something special about it, but I don't remember what it was.
It's like an attack umbrella.
Yeah, it's a really cool umbrella with something on the end of it. I don't remember what it was though. Um, yeah, things like backpack ballistas. Like some of the stuff gets pretty wild. The umbrella injector, that's what it was. It used it to inject things, which, by the way, I love that the idea of injection weapons are a thing in this. This is a thing in Starfinder and something my biohacker character uses pretty religiously in combat. And they're such a neat idea. They're basically weapons that you can use to inject, not necessarily poisons, but like just various things into the character in the attack or as an alternative to an attack. So I think that let's look here, an injection trait. This weapon can be filled with any injury poison. Okay, I guess they do limit it to poisons in Pathfinder 2e, but immediately after a successful attack with the weapon, you can inject the target with the loaded poison with a single interact action. So this is basically the poison weapon feat from like Rogue and other classes get it. You spend an interact action, and if you make the attack, if you land, it also injects them with poison.
So what proficiency do you need to use that?
Well, it is a martial category, and it's considered a melee weapon. There are ranged weapons as well, so I guess just martial. You see martial weapon access. It sounds like. So I don't know.
That is. So a rogue won't have access to it, and I don't think a alchemist will, but a fighter will.
I don't think there's. Oh, there is. No, none of these are injection based. So yeah, it looks like all the injection weapons are martial, which is or advanced, maybe. Nope, all injection, all martial, which is a bit unfortunate. But like I said, the rogue does have the poison weapon feat, which basically does the same thing. With the caveat that the poison weapon feat, I think, only gives you a limited number of poisons to use per day, whereas this seems to be mostly unlimited.
Yeah, for 3 gold for it's a level 0 item. It's pretty amazing.
Unless I don't know, maybe you do have to have. It says injury poison, which I don't think is an actual item in Pathfinder 2e. Like in the rogue poison weapon feat, they just say, was that?
Injury poison is a tag.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So yeah, so it does sound like you do need to have the poison, and you do need to spend basically 3 interact actions to refill it after each use, which is a bit limited. So there's that.
Still nice to bring into combat for if you are playing some kind of inventor or alchemist and you want to buff if you have synergy with like a fighter who is
Hmm.
using a spear. There's a lot of different things going on for this. Did you want to go into the
Yeah,
gunslinger?
I'm going into it right now, trying to find it in this.
That 2-page art opener right
So
there.
yeah, the Gunslinger. I already kind of touched on this that I'm not super happy this is a class, and I don't feel like it does anything particularly unique. The 3 ways are all really cool, but I think the 3 ways could have just been archetypes and given you everything you need. I do find it interesting.
There's
They're
actually a
experts
fourth
out the
way?
gate and in their attacks with specific with simple firearms and martial firearms and crossbows.
I think there's
Um,
a fourth way that is an archetype
Yeah,
down
there
at the
is. So
bottom.
this is the first time we've seen an officially published class archetype, which is the third kind of archetype. There's multi-class archetypes, there's dedication archetypes, and there's class archetypes. But until now, we've never actually seen an example of a class archetype. They just kind of briefly mentioned it in the core rule book.
Mhm.
I find it odd they added it in the same book. They added the class because kind of the point of them is to be able to change classes up. Like in this case, they just basically made a fourth way. Like, why not just add it as one of the ways out the gate? I don't know. I do like that they gave an example of a class archetype though, but I find that the example they gave is a bit of an odd choice. Um,
Should have been an archetype. I'm really not impressed with the gunslinger. I think it's pretty boring.
it is going to be
And
crit city because you do get expert at level 1 in your firearms, and you do get master very early, and you get legendary very early. So you will be critting with a gunslinger more often than you will be with other.
did the gunslinger pick up dealing its class attribute as bonus damage?
I don't recall. I don't think so, unless there's a feat for it, which admittedly I haven't read through all the Gunslinger feats yet. I
I
will
didn't
note though,
also
kind of
for it. No,
skipping ahead a bit. Not the feats. Where is it? The guns equipment.
I don't think that it is gonna. It's not gonna do additional damage the way that like a ranger would or
Right.
um,
But
a
there's
fighter
something
would. But
interesting that I noticed when looking at freaking guns in this thing. Jesus.
it's such a thick book. There's so many rules.
Just show me the tables. Where are they at? All right, here's what I was looking for. So the ranged weapons. And actually, you might be right. These might be considered just simple weapons. So maybe you are right. I don't know. I'll have to
The
get
firearm.
clarification
Look at
on
the
that.
firearm tag. So it lists the group. There should be a little like bullet point on firearm.
Yeah.
'Cause there's simple firearms and then there's martial.
So maybe Inventor does get access. I'll need to look a bit more into that. But the thing I wanted to call out here is this particular trait called, or no, it was just the fatal trait that if you notice for some of these firearms, at first glance they don't do a whole lot of damage, and they're actually more restrictive than like a crossbow. So like a regular
Mm.
crossbow does 1d6 and has no real traits with it, but a pistol, for instance, does 1d4 damage and has less range and only has 10 round capacity, but it does have the concussive trait, which is I'll get to in a second, which is cool. But if you notice, it has a fatal D8, which is more, which
More than the
as a
bow.
gunslinger, you're going to be hitting this a lot. So what this means is not only are you doubling the damage die for a crit, but you're also getting an extra D8. So I feel like firearms in this are really, at least the ones that have this fatal trait on them with the double jump and die, instead of just going up in one die, it goes up 2 dies. So like 1d4 to 1d8 and 1d6 to 1d10. I feel like they are really honing in on the fact that gunslingers are going to be critting like crazy. Because if you take that into consideration, these things do pack a punch, like more so than you might think at first glance, which I think is interesting. And then also just all the traits are just really cool. Like I love the idea you have the modular trait, which is kind of like the firearm version of versatile. The kickback trait is neat. The fatal aim trait is awesome. Um, and I think this is what replaced the unsteady trait that was not super well received in the playtest. The double barrel trait is freaking cool. You can fire both barrels of the double barrel weapon in a single strike to increase the size of the weapon damage die by 1 step. If the weapon has the fatal trait, this increases the size of the fatal die by 1 step as well. That is awesome. Concussive trait is similarly cool. It basically changes up the immunities, so lets you like pick and choose the immunities and resistances you use. So that's really cool. And keep in mind, both for crossbows and guns, they added the concept of attachments, which I don't know about you, Jack, but I think is something I was super hoping they would do.
It bleeds down from Starfinder. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really impressed that they're doing it. It makes sense.
Yep. And
It's
all the attachments examples they give are magic items, so they all have like super special things they can do. Just really cool stuff in here. I love it. But yeah, it's awesome that they didn't just make the attachments unique to firearms. You can also use them on crossbows, which I thought was an awesome point as well. You want to talk about the beast guns a little bit, Jack?
I I really liked the beast guns, which was surprising for me. I normally don't like my guns in fantasy, but the beast guns were just I don't know. For one, the art direction is kind of laughable. It looks uh like you're holding onto a crocodile
Mm-hmm.
and it's
I'm trying to
belching.
find them in the book 'cause they do have some.
There's quite some funny ones. You have one that is some kind of what is the Pathfinder called their oh darn. The chaotic water elemental thing. It's like a Cthulhu. Oh my god, what is that called? It's gonna drive me mad.
I don't know where the actual beast gun section is in here, but here's an example of one in the beast gun archetype. It's literally the head of a dragon on the tip of his gun. Like, how cool is that?
This is the dedication, so you won't see the items until you go down further.
Right, but I can't find it in the bookmark section. I mean, I'm
Yes,
looking
thank you.
throughout the whole thing. I just don't know
It
where it's
was
at.
it is the Algathu. I can't remember what it's called in Dungeons and Dragons now, which is hilarious. Having a
The mind flayers.
no, that's not the same thing. This is the large water elemental
Hmm.
based one.
Yeah, I'm not
So you could
sure.
like you hold on to an Algathu and it has like an ink spray. It
Here we
can
go.
grab you with tentacles and it shoots electricity.
Found them. So yeah, look, this one's like a little water creature. Um,
Well, the thing
Another,
can belch acid, I believe, and fire.
yeah,
There's
they all
there's a
do kind of
basilisk.
unique things.
There's a
I don't know.
that
I
creature.
love them, and I also love the idea of the cobbled guns for goblins as well. That's a funny little thing. It's just basically shoddy thrown together things that.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, one more thing I want to touch on. I think we're going to skip the lore bit just because we're running super low on time. But one thing I want to touch on before we call it today is the ammunition. I know that somebody on the team who worked on this book was a firearm enthusiast. Because the level of detail they go into and the amount of research that has been done on not only the firearms but also the ammunition is crazy. Like when they go in to talk about, let's see, the black powder. There's a section where they talk about the black powder ammunition somewhere in here. It's not this. It might have been up in the firearms section, but they talk about the specifics of having the wadding and the paper and all that, all the things that no one really knows goes into a black powder cartridge for weapons. Like they go into excruciating detail on all that. I thought that was crazy. Like it's not something you would ever see in a Wizards of the Coast book. Like you can
They were
tell
trying to
somebody
cover
on this
guns
design team was
from
truly a firearms enthusiast. And as a firearms enthusiast myself, I can really appreciate that. That they really nothing everything they present here in terms of firearms and ammunition makes sense. Like it's all based on real firearm stuff, except the beast gun and magical stuff, obviously. But like the classical firearms, um, all the types of firearms, they're all accurate to what they would be in the real world for the most part. Obviously, it took some liberties there, but I really appreciate that they went into that level of detail in the explanations and the copy that most people probably aren't going to read anyway. Um, so,
yeah, having a interlocking flintlock star
mhm.
chamber with proper rifling. I mean, the chances of designing all of those different gun things coming from like the flintlock, the musket into like the six shooter. I kind of don't like that they have all those different types. I feel like if each society had one thing that they kind of brought to how they handle it, like with dwarves building black powder, if
Mhm.
they had another like the goblin inventing, some sort of like the repeating mindset about using the gas to reload the weapon, but there's a lot of different things that were invented over a long period of time that are kind of being presented all at once.
Yeah.
And I mean, looking at alternate timelines for, a fantasy-based thing, some of that stuff can make sense,
They do
but
mention down in the lore that somewhere I read towards the beginning of the lore section that these technologies were developed over like tens of thousands of years. But they do kind of present it all at you like it's just kind of, you know, there. Um, and what I found interesting in the lore is that the beast guns actually predated, uh, what was it?
yes,
They
they're
predated the
10,000
ancient
years
guns that
old.
were lost
And
technology.
I was reading about that, and it sounds like it's part of the Aslanti Empire.
Not
Um,
Aslanti, Stan
it
or
ends
whatever.
up, from what I understand, it ends up becoming part of the Aslanti
Oh, you
Empire.
mean in Starfinder?
Correct. So
Ah.
Aslanti has like its own planet,
Mm-hmm.
and so they must have come to like the Pathfinder planet at some point in time.
Alkenstar. That was what I was talking about. It sounds like Jack is talking about the Aslanti from the Starfire or Starfinder universe. It sounds like that their technology is based on some of this stuff, which is kind of cool if you think about it.
As Pathfinder 2 progresses, it looks like Paizo is trying to flesh out the history and this huge, massive gaping gap in history. What happens between Pathfinder and Starfinder?
Yeah.
So I felt like when I was reading the lore about that, I was you can kind of fill in some of the gaps there, and you can kind of see like what they're planning for it.
Yeah. One before we call it, I do want to point out that there is kind of a hidden gem in here in the lore section. There is one more ancestry in this book. It is specific to the Golarian. I can't find it in the bookmarks right now. But it is specific to the Galarian setting. But it is the Dongan Dwarves from the Dongan Hold area. I was actually surprised they didn't just make it a heritage. They made it a full-on ancestry, which I thought was neat. I haven't had time to read through that one yet. As I said, I didn't get a chance to read through most of the lore stuff yet, but I did see that they had the full ancestry there. Um, so
Uh,
maybe not,
I like
maybe if you're not playing Galarian, might be something you could retrofit into your setting or adapt to whatever you need to. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty neat. It's basically like your dwarves from World of Warcraft who were like gun crafters, wielders kind of deal.
there's a lot of Easter eggs in here from Puff the Magic Dragon making an appearance.
Mm-hmm.
They Whoever designed this book, like bravo to Paizo. This is a really well received book. I'm really impressed with all the content that they put into it. If
Yeah.
you guys haven't pre-ordered, it is available now. Go buy it.
Yep. Um, as I mentioned, we will be doing deep dives into each of these things. We were first thinking, three different videos, one for each section. But now that I'm looking at this stuff, it might even take more than that. There's a lot of content in here to go through. If we're trying to keep our videos in the future to be smaller and more consumable in like 15 to 30 minutes. So what we might do is like record a full section, but then split it up in the VOD on YouTube to be multiple bite-size pieces. We'll see how we do it, but yeah, I mean, even if you don't like firearms or if you in your settings, or if you don't like technology in your settings, there might be something in here that you could use as a game master and really give you some inspiration on things to add to your own settings if you're, you know, the type to homebrew. So don't sleep on this one. Definitely a must pick up, I think. But yeah, as another reminder, before we jump off, if you're watching this, the VOD on YouTube, be sure to hit the like, subscribe button. You know, adding those things really helps us with the YouTube algorithm, and you know, get recommended to more people, get more viewers. Let us know on Twitter or in the YouTube comments what you think about the idea of moving to YouTube streaming as a possibility. We'd love to hear your feedback there. And any other ideas you have of like how we can improve the stream, or even the VOD. Like maybe you'd like to see us cut up the VOD when we put it on YouTube and make it multiple bite-sized videos. Is the 1 hour video on YouTube too much? I don't know. What do you guys think? Let us know for sure. We're on Spotify as another reminder, so be sure to check us out there. Listener numbers are a bit low there, so we're trying to boost those up so we can get better analytics to see how we can better serve you there. Reddit, Twitter, Discord. We have 2 Discords actually. We have the Art of Game Mastery Discord, where Jack and I are ever present, and we also have the Shifting Sands Discord, which we're getting ready to run another game Friday, I believe, is the
West March style.
Yeah, West Marches style. So definitely jump in there if you're interested. What else am I forgetting, Jack?
Let's see. We just have some stuff to touch over. Next week we'll be covering Troubling Settings, Hooks, and Plots. We just talked about the 24th. We'll be Bringing Your Dead to Life.
Just in time for Halloween.
We won't have a tag stream for the holiday, the 31st. John and I will probably be busy in other games, so we're still going to be delivering content to you throughout the week.
Yep. And unfortunately, I was hoping to do it tonight, but I had forgotten that I had previous plans, which is where I got to hop off here and head to now. But I'm really hoping Monday, ideally Monday evening, to finally get the companion rules that are in my head written down and reviewed so I can get them published on the website ASAP. Because I know I've been promising those things for a while, and I have been neglecting them, so I hope to get those out soon. Jack, you have a
plethora of things to finish writing for.
Yeah, we both have a lot of stuff to finish presenting and getting up on the website for you all to consume. So apologies on that. We're super busy. Lots of cool stuff coming though. Thank you again for checking us out, and hope to see you next week.
Thanks for joining us in the chat. We greatly appreciate you guys.
Interacting in the chat is one of the biggest things to help us as well. We love to see that. So, but yeah, until next time, happy gaming.
See you guys.